Welcome to the Catalyst of Change, Advancing Equity and Inclusion in Science. This seminar is in English with interpretation available in Spanish, French, and Hindi. You may select the language of your preference at the Zoom bar menu. This seminar will be recorded and made available on the CIMMYT YouTube channel. We will be hearing today from a leader in community building, Wendy Vlieks, President of the Genome Partnership. Right after her presentation, Wendy Vlieks will have a conversation with Aldo Rosales, Maize Quality Laboratory Coordinator based at CIMMYT headquarters. We invite you to submit your questions and comments on the Slido tool to be addressed in the Q&A session right after the conversation. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Bram Govers, Director General of CIMMYT, to officially open the event and introduce our distinguished speaker, Wendy Vlieks. Dr. Govers, over to you. Just 1 second, please. So you may select the language of your preference at the bar. And we can, again, we can put the Slido tool on the screen while Dr. Bram joins. Thank you so much. Very good. So there is some. Okay, I'm very honored to introduce our speaker of today, Wendy Vlieks, the president of the Genome Partnership. Wendy Vlieks is the president of the Genome Partnership, the nonprofit that hosts advances in genome biology and technology meetings, global gatherings at the forefront of genomics in health, agriculture, and industry. Vlieks brings a passion for making genomics more inclusive, more collaborative, and more accessible for the benefit of all communities from greenhouse to brain bean and beyond. Vlieks bring over 25 years of leadership experience across science communication, public trust, crisis management, and agriculture. Her works has spanned Fortune 500 companies, international science teams, and national sustainability programs. Known for her strategic thinking, creative problem solving, and relationship building, she empowers high-performing teams and unites global stakeholders around science-driven innovation. A certified master gardener and dedicated advocate for equity and inclusion in science, Wendy champions programs that support early career researchers and brings together diverse voices to explore the real-world impact of science discovery. Blix is mother of four, a community builder, and a firm believer that science only transforms the world when it is communicated clearly, trusted widely, and shared generously. Wendy Vlieks will have a conversation with Aldo Rosales, who has been working at CIMMYT since February 2007. He holds a bachelor degree in biotechnology engineering and a master degree, in the development of biotech products from Mexico Polytechnic Institute. He currently coordinates the activities of the Maize Quality Laboratory, and he has expertise in various laboratory methodologies and analytical techniques. His experience also includes food processing with a particular focus on nixtamalization. He actively collaborates with entrepreneurs and farmers, supporting the development and adoption of technologies that improve grain quality and promote value-added products. Now, I am so honored to give the floor to Wendy Vlieks. Go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here today, and I am just so excited to be part of this series. I am going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see some slides. Alrighty. So they should be popping up any moment now. Um, It is really meaningful for me to join this conversation because it's centered on equity and inclusion. And those aren't just values that I talk about, they're values that have shaped how I lead and how I communicate and how I show up in the world. What I really want to take you through today is I want you to, at the end of this presentation, know how becoming a better communicator can help you accomplish your goals and set the stage for real change. What I'd like to do is share a little bit about my journey with you, some of the lessons that I've learned about building trust between science and society. Because here's the truth: great science only changes the world when people hear it, trust it, act on it, and collaborate around it. From bench to bedside and greenhouse to grain bin, we need science that doesn't just advance knowledge, but accelerates action. My career didn't start with this exact destination in mind. I began by building a toolbox of skills, things like corporate and consumer communication, issue and crisis management, strategic thinking and planning, and people leadership. But over time, those tools started to take shape as something bigger. What began as a collection of capabilities became kind of a puzzle, and each piece putting into place a beautiful picture that reveals a career that really wasn't just about progression. It wasn't about climbing a ladder, it was shaped by purpose. And that's what prepared me for the job that I have now. I started back in agency public relations, thinking that I wanted to become a vice president or a partner because that's who I admired in the office. But at the end of the day, I thought about those folks in those corner offices, and I realized that I could make a bigger impact if I worked within the organizations that we served, especially those working in science or sustainability or community development. I wanted to put the craft that I was learning to use for good. I started working at Walmart's corporate office, supporting their foundation. And at that time, they donated $500 million a year. I began to see how philanthropy could make a real difference in communities. But once I realized I was brave enough to leave home, my hometown was in St. Louis, Missouri, and I went to Arkansas for that role. I kept going. I moved to Silicon Valley because there I was able to work at eBay, leading PR for eBay marketplaces. And then I worked for a company leading worldwide public relations for a semiconductor company called SanDisk. While I thought I'd only be in California for 2 years, there were just too many opportunities to learn, grow, and teach, keeping me in place. That decade brought me international experience, from product launches in Asia to trade shows and team summits in Europe. And I learned how to navigate both cultural time zones and different nuance. I got married while I was out there. I had identical twin daughters and then another daughter. Eventually, it really felt like it was time to plant some roots. Then I returned home to St. Louis. That way I could have a support system in place. I'd lost my mother when I was working at eBay, but my father, my best friend, and my extended family were all here, and I knew it was a great place to raise a family. We arrived in St. Louis just in time for the birth of my son. So, if you're keeping track, that is 4 children under 3 years old at the same time. My home life and my work life were both very full. My husband left his job temporarily to move here for mine and help with the transition. And that's when I found an ideal intersection of my skills and my passions. Since I originally wanted to become a veterinarian, working at Nestle Purina made perfect sense. I served as a senior director of PR, overseeing corporate reputation and issue management in a space where consumer trust was built brick by brick on science. I collaborated daily with veterinarians, toxicologists, regulatory experts, and R&D teams to ensure that what we said matched what we did, and that we explained our science clearly across vastly different audiences in ways that they'd understand. I also got involved with their DE&I efforts and the Women Leaders Forum because I wanted to help create an inclusive environment as an ally. I led a committee of high potential women, and we focused on educational programming to ensure that other women were ready for promotions. We grew the women who grew the business of helping pets live longer, better lives. That experience really reaffirmed something that I carry with me today. The best science in the world means nothing if people don't understand it and trust it. I saw this firsthand in the pet food industry. There were scientific findings that were pulled successfully into pet food launches in a way that showed people how adding an ingredient could promote cognitive function. At the end of the day, helping an aging pet remember how to play. Or imagining a world where a child with allergies can have that kitten they've always wanted. I also saw what happened when popular products were reformulated based on sound science and good intentions, but without a clear communications plan. What could have been a story of innovation can backfire. Consumers and pets can notice those changes, and without context or explanation, questions can turn to confusion, and confusion can turn to backlash. And you never want to be in a position of doing damage control because the people you're speaking to didn't come along on your scientific journey. It's important to understand that even the best science cannot speak for itself. So if people don't understand the why, trust erodes, even when that science is solid. Communication built on clarity and care is not optional. So please start with why people should care. Scientists often lead with the methodology or the how, but most audiences need the context or the so what first. What's in it for them? How does it impact their lives or the lives of someone they love? That's how you build attention, understanding, and ultimately trust. I also learned that scientists can be the most powerful messengers. I worked with veterinarians, researchers, and executives, coaching them through high stakes interviews and public engagements. And here's what I found: audiences trust the scientific expert who clearly and authentically conveys their information more than a company spokesperson. It's also a leadership mindset, really, because regardless of your field, if you're sharing complex work with others, your job is to learn how to share it in a way that doesn't just make you sound smart, but comes across as clear, credible, and human. Little did I know that these helpful experiences would really be beneficial as my career evolved. Those first 2 decades of my career laid the foundation that I needed for the next chapter, where I had the chance to put the full breadth of my toolbox, bringing science and strategy and marketing communication together to drive real impact. That's when I really entered the agriculture space directly. I joined United Soybean Board, which is a commodity board focused on agricultural research and promoting soy grown in the US. I stepped into a role connecting farmers, researchers, and key stakeholders around science and sustainability. Around that time, I also reconnected with something personal, which is my love of growing food in my own backyard. We quadrupled our number of garden beds, so our family had lots of fresh veggies to eat all the time, all while getting to shape messages about soil health, healthy foods, and resilience. I learned another key lesson: that agricultural progress doesn't happen in isolation. It takes scientists and growers, industry and regulators, communicators and communities. Everyone has to understand and trust the same science, and that only happens when we speak across disciplines and across divides. We helped researchers translate science into language that farmers could understand and use. Why? Because if they didn't apply it, it didn't get adopted. And if it didn't get adopted, it didn't get funded. And when you talk about science, especially food and farming, facts alone aren't enough. Shared values come first. People want to know what the innovation is solving for, and that it's solving for problems they care about, like feeding families, protecting the soil, and improving human health. In campaigns, we didn't just start with seed technology, we started with people. The farmer adapting to extreme weather, ensuring that the soil is healthy for the next generation of farmer. A mom choosing soy for her family and making sure they had all the best recipes. A community in Cambodia using it to improve nutrition for local school children while also creating jobs for women. By focusing on what matters to people, we created space for real dialogue. So don't just lead with an acronym. Lead with what that innovation makes possible. Make it personal, make it practical, make it trustworthy, and also inclusive. At the Genome Partnership, I've served as president since August of 2024. Here, we embed inclusion into the DNA of everything we do. We host the AGBT meetings, which are global gatherings at the forefront of genomics and health and agriculture, and also technology. But we don't just convene top scientists. We work intentionally to make those conversations more inclusive, more collaborative, and more accessible. We do this through speaker curation that amplifies fresh and global perspectives, through scientific organizing committees that reflect the diversity of the field, from rare disease researchers to plant and animal geneticists. We also offer Next Generation Leadership Awards, which support early career scientists from all backgrounds to present and attend our meetings. I'm especially proud to work alongside Dr. Sarah Hearn, CIMMYT's very own Chief Science and Innovation Officer. She's the co-chair of our AGBT Agriculture Organizing Committee, and her leadership exemplifies what this community stands for: collaboration, integrity, and impact. We know that inclusion isn't just about who's invited. It's about who's heard, who's supported, and who's empowered to lead. It's been proven that diverse teams publish work that's cited more frequently. But beyond the data, inclusion leads to better questions, more grounded insights, and broader impact. Genomics has the potential to be the most inclusive science of our time, but only if we design for equity from the beginning. At the Genome Partnership and AGBT, we embed inclusion in our speaker selection, our committees, our awards, because science is stronger when everyone has a seat at the table. And that table has seats where everyone has a voice. When you're using your voice, remember that great science communicators are translators, not just transmitters. Credibility comes from transparency and not perfection. I learned back in my days as a crisis manager that people don't expect all the right answers right away. They want to know that you're listening, that you care, and that you're committed to doing what's right. It's the same with research communication. A finding might not be as definitive as you hoped, but if it's communicated clearly, it paves the path for what comes next. So whether I've been coaching scientists or prepping CEOs, the same principle applies. Clarity builds credibility, and connection builds trust. I'd love for you to put some of these lessons into practice. Take your science, your message, what you do in your daily work, and explain your why. Explain it to someone who doesn't share your background, whether they're a policymaker, a student, a funder, or just a skeptical neighbor or a family member. Talk to them about it and see what resonates. It's a skill that takes empathy, strategy, and respect to build, but it's how you make your work matter in the hearts and minds of others. I'd also like you to do something for yourself. Figure out what sets you apart. What's your unique value? The thing that you bring to the table in a way that no one else quite can. For me, doing a reflected best self exercise helped crystallize that. I got to see myself through the lens of other people's positive experiences, and it reminded me that even on the hard days, I can lead with clarity, connection, and care. Because when you know your strengths, you stop chasing someone else's path and you start creating your own. And when you lift others up as you rise, You build teams that are more diverse, more resilient, and more capable of doing truly great work together. To do that, you'll need a supportive network. So build your network now, not just for today, but for the future you can't yet see. It's important to have some deep relationships, but not every connection needs to be a best friend. They need to know you well enough to answer a question for you, to forward an email for you, to make an introduction. Those connections and your relationships are your runway. They're a bridge between where you are and where you're headed next. So, submit the abstract, ask the question, present the poster, even if it terrifies you. Show up in a room where no one knows you and make them remember you. And lastly, remember that we don't need to separate who we are from what we do. Authentic leadership means bringing your whole self. A favorite boss once called my office a place where crayons and crises collide. As a working mom in crisis management, I sometimes had to take emergency calls while my child colored quietly nearby. That's real life. Great science and inclusive leadership start with when we lead with who we are, not just what we do. I'm a mother, I'm a gardener, I'm an animal lover, a communicator, connector, and convener. And at my best, I help others be their best. So please be brave and stay open. If you show up fully and lead with intention, doors will open, often in unexpected places. And sometimes those doors will lead to opportunities even bigger and better than the ones you imagined. I never expected that sponsoring a White House event would land me in this photo with the president, but it reminded me, when you show up for meaningful work that feeds people and brings them together, you never know where it might lead or who might be standing beside you. So nurture your strengths, share your story, and stay curious. Because sharing even the smallest insights in a community that cares can grow into the biggest breakthroughs and lead to transformative change, especially when shared with clarity, trust, and a genuine care for the people who need them most. That's how real change takes root. If you work in agriculture genomics, I hope you'll join us at an AGBT agriculture meeting sometime. The next one is in April in Phoenix, Arizona. Registration opens in November. You would be welcome in that room. Thanks for having me, and I'm ready for any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Wendy. It was a pleasure hearing about your experience. Thank you for sharing thank you for sharing them with us. My name is Aldo Rosales. I'm working in the Maize Quality Laboratory. I have been working at CIMIC for 18 years, and I have seen real progress when it comes to equity and inclusion in many areas, especially in agriculture and science, both out in the field and in the laboratory. There is still a lot to do, but talks like this help us to see how far we've come. So I have a couple of questions for you. Some of the things that you are sharing already with us are very important. But during your 25-year professional career, what was the most difficult experience in your professional journey? And the most important thing, how did you deal with it? And what did you learn from it?
All right, gosh. Well, I know I painted a very rosy picture of my career, but I will tell you my path hasn't always been smooth. Some of the most difficult things I've experienced would be, getting passed over for a promotion when I worked for it for years. Once I was also laid off during a restructuring. And I think I had to realize that I was a workaholic, defined by career success. So the hardest part was introducing myself when I was in between roles without a title and without a script. And in those moments, I learned a very hard but a very beautiful truth that my job title didn't define me. You are not your job. Your value doesn't come from a business card. It comes from your values and your strengths and how you show up for others, even when the future is unclear. I think there's a saying that says, a bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the turn. So I made the turn and it led me to a place where I could grow, lead, and thrive.
Yeah, thank you. Sometimes we forget that continuously. We think that the job is the most important thing, and yes, it's very important, but it's not the most important. So that's good to remember that, and that's why I like when you compare your journey with a postdoc, because a postdocs never are easy. So it was a very very good comparison, and I also love your lesson number 3, talking about science and talking about science companies. Start where people are, not where you wish they were, and that's something that also we forget continuously. We go to the field, we go to the farmers, and we say to them, we have this, please work with this, or try to work with another seeds, try to change your work or your routine. So that's very important also to apply, start where people are. And talking about that problem, your workaholic problem, how do you keep a good balance between your work and your personal life?
That's a great question. It's a tough balance, and I believe you can have it all, but you can't have it all at the same time. So you can work long hours, you can have quality time with kids, work on your professional development, relax, exercise, spend time with family and friends. You could even have a perfectly clean house. But there are so many hours in a day, only so many. There's 24, and you can't get around that. I think that balance is fluid. Some months, weeks, or days, I leaned more into work, especially when I was traveling. Others, I prioritized my family, my social life, or my health. I remember one time I came back from a long work trip in Australia, and when I got to the door, my twins were crawling at the time. They looked at the nanny before they came to me to make sure it was okay to come to me. And that was a wake up call. So for the next few years, I only traveled for essential work. If I didn't need to travel, I didn't go. If I needed to, I did. And that was a decision that I made to help have that balance that I needed. So I think that success isn't about climbing, it's about choosing what matters most at any given moment and knowing that priorities evolve over time.
Despite the progress made in recent years, there are still many circumstances that make it more difficult for women to access leadership positions, especially mothers. You have a lot of experience with that, mother of 4. Since most of the childcare responsibilities still fall on them, what is your advice for these women, and what should organizations do to better support them?
I think that raising children while pursuing leadership is incredibly demanding, but also incredibly meaningful. It really takes a village, and I would say not to try to do it alone, to build a support system and include your partner in that system. In my case, my husband works full time, but he cooks 90% of our meals. That really allows me to work the long hours that I need to work in order to fulfill my mission. I manage a lot of the invisible work, though, like scheduling, schools, sports, talking to the school. You have to figure out a system that works for you and that really helps you out because you cannot physically do everything. And as my kids have grown, they're now 11 through 14. I've realized how fast time goes, and every phase brings different needs and different ways that you can lean into your career. So, my advice to moms would be ask for the help you need, let go of perfection. Not everything's going to be perfect all the time. And know that you can still say yes to opportunities that come along. You can also say no or not right now. It's up to you. And for organizations, don't decide for women. Let them decide. Give them the option to tell you if they want to take that next big role, even if they're pregnant, even if they just had a baby. It's up to them to decide if a role is too demanding or too much travel. I know some moms who love to travel. They think it's the best thing ever. So don't pass on a woman for an opportunity just because she's a mother. And then normalize flexibility. The things that a mom needs to do can be accomplished in an hour here or there. So give her the freedom to do that, because sometimes it doesn't matter if that email is sent at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. It gets sent. So value empathy and emotional intelligence as a leadership strength and not a liability. Because I think women, especially mothers, bring unmatched resilience, empathy, and focus. And when supported well, they can do well, they can lead well, and the organizations and their missions benefit.
Thank you. And in science professions, in science careers, until now, it's a little bit difficult to see women in that kind of areas. How we can promote the participation of women in science careers, in mathematical careers?
Oh, I think it's really important that women in science put themselves out there to be seen by young girls. We often talk about being strong women, knowing strong women, and raising strong women. The females out there who are thinking about what they can be when they grow up, they need to see other scientists and know that that's a possibility for them. And I think one of the things that I try to do with my children and my daughters is not to shut any doors for them, not to make any assumptions for them, to make sure they understand that if they work on their math, on their science, they can be anything that they want to be, and that they can do it just as well as anyone else.
Thank you. And talking a little bit about discrimination troubles that we have around the world. In many Latin American countries, it's very common that discrimination is related to the personal appearance or job position, especially inside the companies. The job position is very important for many people. What strategies would you suggest to help eliminate this kind of behaviors, especially inside organizations?
Okay, well, I think discrimination looks different in different places, but it exists everywhere. Sometimes it's overt and accepted as part of the culture, and others it's more subtle, and maybe even covered up behind non-disclosure agreements. Um, I think what's really needed is allies who support and advocate for women, hiring and succession plans that reflect gender equity, and then sticking to those succession plans. Don't just put a woman on there and then choose an alternative when the time comes. Accountability is really important. So when bias shows up in decision making, calling out that accountability. And then I think being your own advocate is important for women. Try to find advocates for you, but if you can't, you need to advocate for yourself. And if you're in a truly toxic environment, don't stay. There are other places where you can put your talents to good use, because the goal is not just representation, it's equity and influence. And one of the things that I do try to do to support women is help to demystify executive presence, because too often we're told that we're missing something based on a rubric that's designed for someone else. Because I don't think real presence is about your height or your voice. It's about confidence and trust. It's about how you make people feel, if they feel seen or heard and confident in you. So we need to really support each other and speak up and lead visibly, because when women lead, organizations get stronger.
Uh, in your in your professional experience during all these years, did you have any special case of discrimination inside your organization? Have you seen something like this?
I would say there's this one time when I got interviewed for a job in another country, and they recruited me for the interview and they flew me over for the interview. It was a big deal. And when I got there, one of the main questions was, what makes you think that men around the world are going to listen to you? I was shocked, because that's not a question that you can ask in an interview in the United States. Um, I came up with a response, and I held my tears for after the interview, but I was really shaken that was something that could take place in a workplace. So that's really one of the examples that I'll share.
And do you think that maybe in the universities or in the schools, professor, teachers, or maybe the studies plan can make something better to promote inclusion during the professional journey in the jobs? Because I don't remember a specific topic during my professional career about discrimination, for example, or inclusion. Do you think that it's necessary that universities or schools must include this topic in their plans?
I think that's a wonderful idea. I think that that would really go a long way. And it can be looked at through many different lenses because when you think about building strong teams, you need diverse teams. You need to bring people to the table who have all kinds of skill sets that complement your own. And so I think that it could really benefit the schools and the people going through school that when they get out, that'll help them, that'll help their career, and it'll also help the organizations they're serving. So it could show up whether it's in an HR class or a business class or a leadership class. Knowing that different people take different tracks, I think it needs to be peppered throughout the curriculum.
Thank you. Isabel, maybe we could pass to the slide of questions, so let us, if we have a little more time to talk.
Aldo, yeah, if you have more questions, Aldo, you can continue with the conversation, and then if that is okay with you.
Okay, sure. No
Okay.
problem. It's a great
Okay.
moment to share experience with Wendy.
Excellent.
Something that you mentioned during your presentations was a phrase that said, do things that scare you. It sounds easy, but it's very difficult to apply. So do you have any device or a strategy to say, okay, that experience scares me, but I must to do it? How we can be most brave in this case? Because it's not easy. It's very easy to say. Usually, when I talk with some young people, especially with children, I always say, if it scares you, don't worry, just do it, even if you are scared. But inside, it's very difficult to do it.
Oh, how to teach bravery. That's a tough one. I think that you really have to think about all the things that you'd like to do. Make a list, write them down. Um, Write down the things that scare you the most, but that would help your career the most or help you achieve your goals the most. And even if it scares you, if you know that it's a skill that you need to build, um, it's something that you need to work on, right? So map it out. What do I want to accomplish? What do I want to do? What skills do I need to build? And what would I do and what would I try if I knew I couldn't fail? And give it a shot.
That's a good advice. We must apply that also, maybe. But yes, it's not simple. It's not easy for a lot of people, but we must do it. In your experience, you have a lot of scenarios in different areas. You have been working in the field, sometimes in your office or in the labs. How do you think that we can share the knowledge that we are producing in the field with the knowledge that we are producing in the laboratories and the knowledge that we are producing in the office? Because sometimes we are not working all the time together in different organizations. It's very common that if I'm working in the field, I'm just worried for the troubles, for the problems that I have in the field, but we never see the other part. I think that is a very common in many organizations. But how did you deal with it? How do you have an strategy to share this kind of knowledge between the different areas?
Yeah, I think it's really important to figure out how to communicate across different disciplines and make sure that the people who need to know different information know it. There's this whole concept of agility, and you can only be agile enough to make decisions if you have all of the information that you need in order to make those. And one of the things that I did a lot in my career was lead cross-functional teams of experts across the organization. I was also often a conduit to parent companies or global networks within my organizations. And if those teams and those organizations don't have those networks already built, I think it's perfectly acceptable to form them, even if they're informal. So if you're realizing, hey, this group in the field and this group in the lab and this other group, they really should be talking on a fairly regular basis. Find a colleague in each of those groups and have a monthly or a quarterly touch base, or open up an ongoing, chat channel so that you can stay up to date on, what problems they're experiencing, how they're solving for them, and then how you can help each other.
Thank you. And also talking about communication, how often and in what way do you communicate decisions to your team?
Communicating decisions to my team. I think that one of the strategies that a career coach had talked to me about as being a best practice, which I employed with one of my teams and I continue to execute on today, is a cadence of ongoing team meetings interspersed with one-on-one meetings with team members. And that way you'd have the opportunity to communicate different decisions being made or leadership updates on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, but no fewer than once a month, and then real time if it was an important decision.
And in big organizations, we have different levels. And usually the levels that are in some fragile positions usually don't have all the communications directly from the leaders. How we can improve that thing? How can we be sure that we are communicating and that we are taking in account to the basis of the companies, the workers, the assistants that usually are not taken in account in many organizations?
So how to cascade communications to every level.
Yes.
I think having a really strong internal communications plan and team can be helpful there. Making sure that there's a repository, sometimes with an intranet, a place where people can kind of self-serve that information can be really helpful. And then making sure that when important things are happening, that those important things have communications plans associated with them, that think in advance about how to share that information across the organization and what kind of questions will arise, and then equipping department heads and managers with the talking points that they need to share in their team meetings, or sharing them out in a newsletter to all employees that everyone has access to. And thinking back to even when I worked in an environment where there were a lot of factories, where they didn't have access to their email, we would print things out that could go on the bulletin board, and different methods for different people, and how they were able to access information.
And I think that the new generations, the young people, have other skills, but also another ideology, talking in many topics. In your organization, how you are handling the new generations? Because it's obviously that they have another shift, very different from our shifts. So how do you deal with that?
Well, let's see. I'm from the generation where you just work really hard and hope that it pays off, right? I think that the next generation of workers is really helping to teach us lessons at the end of the day. They're helping to teach us that, you know, it's not all about how many hours you can work, but it's about, the impact that you can make. It's not about what you do yourself, but how you spread that out and how your influence essentially, accomplishes things even through other people. So I would say that they're teaching us to not hit the point of burnout. And as a leader, we just have to realize that sometimes this next generation isn't going to pick working for a promotion or a pay raise as their primary goal. It might be their free time that they value the most. So you need to figure out, how to structure their day, their goals, and their award system around what they value. And don't assume you know what they value. They may value different things, so you need to have those kind of conversations with them to find out.
So do you think that we could have in a very close future any impact inside organizations and companies with this new generation? Because if they are not looking for promotions, they are looking for free time, how this behavior could impact inside the different companies?
I have heard many people say, I don't want that leadership role, but I think that there will still be enough people who are driven for those types of roles that we won't have any trouble, uh, stacking the pipeline and grooming the next generation for leadership roles. We'll have to be a little bit more thoughtful about building out those development plans and ensuring that we're touching base with them to see, what kind of things that they're interested in, what they want to do next, and keep that pipeline and that succession plan really full with people who are looking to try new and different things and with more responsibilities.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I really enjoyed this conversation with you. It's a great pleasure hear about the experience of someone with a long journey in different areas. And I love how you are integrated your different experience in different fields through different lessons, through different experience lives. So thank you so much, and we hope see you soon here. I don't know if Isabel have another question for you, but I'm very happy and thanks for this opportunity to talk with you. And we hope see you here in CMIT again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.
Thank you very much, Aldo, for having this exciting conversation with Wendy Vlieks. We invite the audience to participate in the open Q&A session. Be ready to raise your hand, open your micro and your camera. Also, you are invited to submit questions via Slido for our distinguished speaker of today. So probably you have already mentioned about your inspiration, but maybe you can tell us where do you find inspiration or what excites you most about your work today?
Wow. Well, how I find inspiration about my career, I really found from my mother, who both of my parents didn't go to college, and my mother and my father both were such hard workers that they became, successful in their own right. And my mom was just a power woman. She was from that generation who did everything. She led a real estate office of hundreds of real estate agents, and she also did all the cooking and the cleaning and really showed up for us and in all the ways that we needed as children. And so she really was my role model when I first started my career. But when I think about the work that I do today, I'm just really inspired by the brilliant scientists I work with. They're the brightest minds with the boldest ideas. And just being able to be within their orbit really helps to, fill my bucket and help me know that, no matter what I'm doing, no matter how small, I'm really helping them to, heal people and feed the world. And that makes me, feel like I'm making a difference. And so anyone out there who's, not in science, but supports scientists, whether you're doing accounting or procurement or anything, you're making a difference, in the work that they're doing and bringing to the world.
Thank you so much. What words of wisdom could you share with young and mid-career women and young professionals who might be struggling with issues related to their professional development or decisions? Because there is sometimes that we are already 40 years old and we are not sure about our path. So, what would be those words of wisdom you would like to share?
Well, I think that, it's not perfection that creates a change maker. It's resilience, curiosity, and the courage to keep going when the path ahead needs clearing. It's just keep trying. You'll figure it out eventually. And I think that you need to surround yourself with other people who believe that you can do it and believe in your best. And when you figure out what your unique value is and what you bring to the table that no one else does, focus on that. Every day think, did I bring my best self today? And if not, give yourself grace, forgive yourself, and then try to bring your best self the next day.
Thank you so much. So, our seminar of today is Catalyst of Change, Advancing Equity and Inclusion in Science. So, what would be also your recommendations to institutions like CIMIT in order to develop a further participatory and inclusive environment professionally and personally?
Yeah, I think, finding mentors and sponsors within your organization is really important. And they don't have to be official. It doesn't have to be a formal mentor program where, people are meeting with mentors a certain number of times. Um, I've had a lot of mentors over the years. Some are colleagues or scientists or leaders who showed up, at the right moment with truth or perspective or quiet support. Um, One mentor taught me that it's not about doing everything yourself, it's about the impact of your influence. Another gave me tough feedback, like very real feedback, like you do this and you should do this. And that helped me. So, you know, as an organization, be sure to give real actionable feedback to people so that they can, clear those obstacles that stand in their way of progression. Um, I'd say one toxicologist, a scientist, every time I called, he immediately came over to explain, complex things to me so that then I could translate them to a lay audience. Uh, and when I hit a career wall, a C-suite leader, an executive woman said, that I should work on building deeper relationships with my boss's peers. So think about who's making decisions about my future. So giving people permission to network around the organization so that they could have, leadership know who they are and the value that they bring. So letting them have those conversations and paving that path, I think is really important. So, having powerful support uh, with open doors, but also behind closed doors is really important. And you might change someone's life, and even if they don't know you ever spoke up on their behalf.
Thank you so much. So, regarding leadership style, and you have already mentioned a little bit of those, what do you think it would make a difference? What would be the recommendation, the takeaways about for leadership?
I think different leadership styles, work for different people, and not everyone has to lead in the same way. I think it's important to lead with intention and to always be developing yourself and always be continuously improving. So, keep an eye on leaders that you admire around the office so that you can emulate them until you figure out what style works best for you.
Thank you so much. I think it is a lot about admiring the others, building trust, building team working, and develop those skills also for interpersonal and professional relationships. Thank you so much. So, and just to finalize, what words of wisdom would you like to share with the audience as our takeaway?
Goodness, what words of wisdom. Okay. I think that, catalysts of change aren't always in the lab. They're the ones asking the right questions. They're connecting ideas across sectors and translating science into impact. So whatever your background, if you're here to support and drive discovery forward, you belong in this work. So when I think about what the scientists around me are working on, I feel good that I know that I'm helping them make a difference, and you can too.
Thank you so much. So, on behalf of Dr. Brian Govers, Director General of CIMIT, we thank Wendy Vlieks so much for sharing with us your outstanding professional and personal journey. Thank you. Thank you for being a catalyst of change. And also, we thank the audience that joined today. We invite you to the following Catalyst of Change Advancing Equity and Inclusion in Science seminar in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.